Hi there, BookTube. It's Roz. Now, you know, when I read a really kind of like hot off the press new bit of fiction, I will, if I can, do a quick review so that you can think if it's one that you might like to read too. And so this is Universality by Natasha Brown, which was published in March 2025 in the UK. Not sure about elsewhere, but so very new and quite exciting, I think. So Natasha Brown's first book, Assembly. I've got to be careful how I hold this, haven't I? Because it's sort of quite reflective. So Natasha Brown's first book, Assembly, was one of the sort of hottest debut novels, most critically acclaimed debut novels of 2021, the year it came out. And so her follow-up has been eagerly anticipated. Does it live up to Assembly? Well, personally, I think yes. I think so. I think it's possible that it will have slightly less universal appeal. Bit of a pun there with its name. But I loved it. And she's a writer that, on the basis of her first two novels, a writer who's good at that good things in small packages kind of approach to writing. And that's something that I'm a sucker for that. I really, really like a book that manages to be rich and intense and pack a lot of ideas or characters or story into a relatively short space. And this does that in spades. Full of ideas, but also technically accomplished, I suppose. And it's that kind of combination that I find particularly appealing in a book. So the thing about Brown, I'd say, is that she comes over as just a really intelligent writer. She's really thinking about things and then brings the things that she thinks about to her books. And she's not afraid of dealing with potentially controversial subjects through her fiction. So, like Assembly, this deals with issues like class and race and diversity and privilege. But she doesn't write a diatribe. This is genuinely, a nuanced piece of fiction, and she's not a writer that tells you how to think. In fact, she doesn't even tell you exactly how she thinks. More, what I think she's trying to do is get us, the readers, to think, to explore our attitudes or assumptions through reading her book, and that will generate questions and reflection in our minds, and that's certainly what this book did for me. It's but with subtlety, with nuance. So the book sort of is based around a kind of fairly dramatic incident that takes place in a sort of old rural farm building in Yorkshire during the COVID lockdown. Okay, so there is this incident, all right. And the first part of the book is a kind of journalistic style write-up of that incident, with interviews with the different people involved, and done very much in the style of something could be a podcast, or could be something that or a blog post, but probably something that you read in the I don't know, the Sunday section of a quality paper, say. And that's version one of the story. But then, over the course of the book, and as I say, it's not a long book, we get different perspectives, different versions, or kind of retellings of the same story. But it's not quite as simple as that, more than just a retelling of the same story. But we see different aspects of the different people involved in the original version that we read. And we're asked to think about truth and stories and who should we believe, or whose truth, because everyone has a personal understanding of events, but also a kind of a version of themselves that they want to put out there, I suppose, or that they're trying to get their readers, or the person they're talking to, or their listeners to take on board, so that a character who's kind of like almost a hate figure in one section can become quite a sympathetic, rounded human being in a later section. So I guess that's what I mean about it being nuanced and not just sort of one version telling you what to think, or the way to think about it. As I say, it's about stories and how they're, but also not just different stories, but how they're told. About the power of words, I suppose, the power of words to influence us or to shape our understanding of something. And it's also looking at how contemporary media operates. So, as I say, I suppose this is quite an intellectual book. I don't mean by that it's hard to read. It's her writing style is very crisp, very accessible. It's easy to read, in fact. But yes, when I say it's an intellectual book, I mean if you're looking for a book that has, a central character that you become really close to, you won't get that from this book, or a single through thread of plot. It's not that either. It's more of a book about, as I say, words and meaning and stories, rather than one person and one story. So that could be a reason why it wouldn't appeal to you, but it's also the reason why I have to say I thought it was brilliant and I really loved it.